Jesus, for you, dear God, to bring a settledness, dear God, into Christian's mind, that you would anoint his mind, God, and give him freedom today to teach. Thank you for this man's life. Thank you, dear God, that um, it is above reproach. Thank you for giving him strength, dear God, to overcome the temptations of this life. Thank you for loving him and your kindness and mercies to this man today. May he walk great streets of gold in Jesus' name. Love you, Christian. Bless you. Love my friend. Love you.
Okay, so I would like to thank Brother Alders for this opportunity. He has been a wonderful pastor to me in the, I think, 8 years that we've been coming here. And so I thank him for all that he has done for me, my family, and for this opportunity. Now I'd also like to thank God, because without God, none of this would have been possible on so many levels. Especially if you take into account my lifetime. A brief thing, because I know there's some guests and some people I haven't talked to as much as others. A brief testimony from my life is when I was about 2 years old, I was swimming with my family and I drowned. And it wasn't just like, oh, he's underwater for a little bit. By the time they found my body, and I mean my body, I was the color of the sky. I was, for all purposes, dead. But by faith and prayer, I'm standing with y'all now. Now, like I said, I thank the Lord for this opportunity and for what he's done for me in my life, because it stretches. It stretches beyond even the stuff that I know about. And as it stretches and I look back, things I didn't realize in the moment, I realized later on. And so, with that being said, now I have a lesson, and it's called, what I would title it, and what I have titled it, is Refining Faith. And as it kind of displayed with what my testimony has been and with my life, I have seen the actions of faith. I have seen a response to faith. My life has been filled with my faith and the faith of others. And so I got this lesson as Brother Alders was asking me to teach. I got a lesson almost immediately, and I was like, okay, I'm ready to go. And then Wednesday comes along. And as Brother Alders is preaching, he starts talking about gratitude. And I start thinking, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'm supposed to do something different on Sunday. Well, then I start praying some more, and as I keep praying and I keep thinking, the two things start coming together. They start weaving themselves together. And so, what I have may not be the most polished sermon. It may not be the most magnificent piece of art you've ever heard. And it's not even a sermon. It's not supposed to be a sermon. It's a lesson. It's something that I've learned, and I'm wanting to share with y'all. So, how many of y'all know what the process for refining silver is? Okay. Well, one of the greatest parts about refining silver is there's heat. You put the silver with all the impurities in it, you put it in the heat, and as it melts, the impurities go to the surface. And not only do they come to the surface, but then after it comes to the surface, you cool it, you cut off the impurities, and then you do it again. It's not a one and done process. It's repeated. It has to be refined multiple times before it's at its peak purity. Now, why does peak purity matter? Well, Good thing y'all asked. So when silver has been fully purified, it can reflect up to 95% of its surroundings, which is almost perfect. Now, what does silver and what does that have to do with us? Or what does it have to do with faith? Well, we are supposed to be like Christ. We are made in the image of Christ. And so as we go and we think about our lives and where God has brought us from, we see the impurities that have been taken off as we've walked this path. And the more we see the impurities fall off, the more we start to realize just how much more we reflect Christ in our lives, in our actions, in our words. Now, why refining? Well, in Malachi, let me get there real quick. 3, chapter, Big Bible, okay. 1, verses, Malachi chapter 3, verses 1 through 7. Behold, I will send my messenger, and he shall prepare the way before me. And the Lord, whom ye seek, shall suddenly come to his temple, even the messenger of the covenant, whom ye delight in. Behold, he shall come. He saith the Lord of hosts. But who may abide the day of his coming? Who shall stand when he appeareth? For he is like a refiner's fire, and like a fuller's soap. And he shall sit as a refiner and purifier of silver. And he shall purify the sons of Levi, and purge them as gold and silver, that they may offer unto God an offering in righteousness. Then shall the offering of Judah and Jerusalem be pleasant unto the Lord, as in the days of old, and as in former years. And I will come near to you to judgment, and I will be a swift witness against the sorcerers, against the adulterers, against false swearers, and against those who oppress the hireling in his wages, the widow and the fatherless, and that turn aside the stranger from his right, and fear not me, saith the Lord of hosts. Now, as we see here, we see that Malachi, quoting the word of the Lord, he says he's a refiner who sitteth at a fire. Now, why does sitting at a fire have to do with a refining process? Well, you see, it takes very delicate work to ensure that the refining process goes accordingly. Because if you're not paying close attention, it's not going to work as it should. And so you have to sit there. You have to watch. Because when the impurities come up to the surface, you got to be ready to let it cool, cut them off, and do it again. It's not something that you can just let it go and just it'll take care of itself. It has to be maintained, and it has to go through a long and tedious process, one that has to be observed carefully. Well, good news for us, God cares for us, and he watches over us carefully. Now, though this is a long process, and we have lives and they span years, and God is working on us constantly, there is a point where we are refined, where we do reach that end. And let me get there real quick. That's in 2 Timothy 4, verse 7, it says, this is Paul talking to Timothy, I have fought a good fight, I have finished my course, I have kept the faith. Now, what he's saying here is he has gone through the process, and he's finished it. But where does the finishing happen? Well, what's going on right now? He's about to be put to death. The refining process isn't over until we meet the Lord. But as we keep going through our lives, we are still being refined. So we may not be at 95% as far as our reflection of Christ goes. We won't reach that point while we're on this earth. But we'll keep going closer. We'll keep pursuing that. Because Christ was perfect, and we are imperfect, but he makes us perfect through him. And when we get to heaven, we'll be perfect with him and get to worship him in his glory. Now, how does he refine us in fire? Well, there's trials for one. Trials are probably one of the most common terms that we will use when we're talking about a fire or a storm or something we're going through. It's the trials that we deal with on a daily basis. But fire isn't the only way that we are refined. You see in Proverbs chapter 27, verse 17, probably my favorite verse of Scripture, it says, "Iron sharpeneth iron, so a man sharpeneth the countenance of his friend." Now, what iron sharpeneth iron? That's completely different than silver. It's a different metal. It's still metallic looking. But when you're sharpening iron with iron, it's not just sharpening it. It's refining it. See, as the Lord's refining us, we're going through these trials with God, he's bringing others with us. There are other people in our lives that God is using to refine us, to refine our faith. Now, how this relates to faith is in Revelation 12:11. Well, kind of messed up a little bit. Let me see. There it is. Okay. And Revelation 12:11 says, "And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto the death." Now, this has to do with faith, because when we tell our testimony, we are showing our faith, but we're also, by sharing it, we're strengthening and building others' faith. Because the greatest way to build faith is to know someone else has gone through what you did and they came out. So that our testimonies not only have the strength to build our faith, because it's what God's done for us. And if he's done something for you, you get faith from that's happened. And as we testify, we are sharing what God has done and building faith in others. Now, you're like, well, God hasn't done anything noticeable for me this week or today. Or like if you think like that, you're probably thinking too large of a scale. Because are you breathing? Can you hear me? Are you here today? Okay. Which, that's small. Well, my friends, I have something for y'all. In Matthew 17:20, let me get there in my Bible. It's taking me a minute. Okay. Almost there. Okay. It's pretty one of those pages. Okay. And Jesus said unto them, "Because of your unbelief, verily I say unto you, if ye have faith as a grain of mustard seed, ye shall say unto this mountain, remove hence to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible unto you." Which, as most of y'all who have been in church, and even people who haven't, you notice that a seed is small. And a mustard seed is one of the smallest, if not the smallest, when it comes to trees. Now, what does this have to do with each other? Christian, you're being random. Well, when you're sharing your testimony, you're building faith, not just in yourself, in others. Now, still, you're like, Christian, stop being random. Get to the point. Okay, so the point is that faith you're building in them, even if it's just a little bit, just a little inkling, just a little seed, it will grow. And not only will it grow, but it will expand beyond what you thought it would. But you're like, it started out as just a small seed. It's just a little bit of faith. Well, in this verse, it says faith can move mountains. So, as we're going through this refining process, and we are being refined with others, and God is using us to refine others, we start to realize that our testimony is how God is one of the ways God is using us to do that refining. Now, like I said, a small amount of faith. Well, what else have I said it was small? The small things that God is doing for you, like being here. That it's just a small, miniature thing to be thankful for. But that little testimony can plant a seed that grows. Now you're like, where's the proof? Some of y'all may be like that. Now, I've come prepared for that. In Mark chapter 1, verse 44 through 45, it says, "And he saith unto him, See thou say nothing to any man, but go thy way." One second. "Show thyself to the priest, and offer for thy cleansing those things which Moses commanded, for a testimony unto them." Now, this was Jesus talking to a man that he had just healed. And it was a test. He said, Jesus told him to do it as a testimony unto the priest. But what he didn't do according to what God told him, he didn't say nothing to any man. Now, like, how far could this spread? Like, like, I doubt it would be a big problem if he told a couple people. Well, apparently, he went out and began to publish it much, and to blaze abroad the matter, in so much that Jesus could no more openly enter into the city, but was without in desert places, and they came to him from every quarter. You see, that little bit of testimony that he gave to people as he was going, it spread. And it didn't just spread a little here and a little there. In so much that Jesus could no longer enter the city. You see, the faith didn't just stop at him or a couple people. It was a multitude that congregated to Jesus as the result of one testimony. One person's testimony blazed this abroad. Now, like I said, this probably wasn't one of the smaller things God had done. This is a pretty big miracle. He healed him. But that doesn't stop the fact that a faith the size of a mustard seed can move mountains. You see, the testimony matters. No matter how big or how small, it can move mountains and it can break down strongholds. Now, another instance of faith on the move is found in the next chapter. And it says in Mark 2, verses 1 through 12, and he entered into Capernaum after some days, and it was noised that he was in the house. And straightway many were gathered together, in so much that there was no room to receive them. No, not so much as about the door. And he preached the word unto them. And they come unto him, bringing one sick of the palsy, which was born of 4. He was being carried by 4 of his friends. And when they could not come nigh unto him, unto Jesus, for the press, the people that had gathered around him, they uncovered the roof where Jesus was. And when they had broken it up, they let down the bed wherein the sick of the palsy lay. When Jesus saw their faith, there's some faith, okay? So when he saw their faith, he said unto the sick of the palsy, Son, thy sins be forgiven thee. But there were certain of the scribes sitting there and reasoning in their hearts, Why doth this man thus speak blasphemies? Who can forgive sins but God alone? And immediately When Jesus perceived in his spirit that they so reasoned within themselves, he said unto them, Why reason ye these things in your hearts? Whether it is easier to say to the sick of the palsy, Thy sins be forgiven thee, or to say, Arise, and take up thy bed, and walk. But that ye may know that the Son of Man hath power on earth to forgive sins. He saith to the sick of the palsy, I say unto thee, Arise, take up thy bed, and go thy way into thine house. And immediately the sick of the palsy arose, and he took up his bed, went forth before them all, insomuch that they were all amazed, and glorified God, saying, We never saw it on this fashion. Well, what happened here? 4 people got together. They had a faith together that they carried their friend to Jesus. But their faith did not stop when they got to the place and saw that they could not enter a traditional means. No, a miracle took place of ingenuity when they were like, we can't get to Jesus with the current circumstances. So we're going to go a different route. We are going to pursue Jesus, even if it looks a little weird. And when they did, it showed their faith. It displayed to Jesus how far their faith had grown. Now, all this started because one dude was healed, and he shared his testimony, which led to the people that brought their friend not being able to get in the door because so many people had gathered to hear Jesus speak due to a testimony that happened in a different location. The crowd had followed Jesus all the way because of a little faith. And because of that little faith, a man was healed of being sick of the palsy. And that faith just continued to grow in the multitude. Because this is not the only time where Jesus had to move to a different location or go to a desert place to try and get a little bit of peace. He literally went up to a mountain to try and get away from the people so he could have a moment. And the people were still following. And so he sent his disciples away for a little bit across the sea so that they won't have to deal with all these people that are constantly crowding him. And so what we have seen is that some faith pulls others in. It causes people to crowd around, but just faith alone won't do it, because where are the people going to come from if they don't know what's going on? So we not only have faith in what God is doing for us and what he's going to do for us, but we have to have faith and share our testimony so that way it reaches and it plants seeds that God is going to grow. Now, let me see I only got so much time with y'all. And we're getting pretty close to that time. So, God is refining us. But he's also wanting to use us to refine others through our testimonies. Through what God has done for us, no matter how big or how small, you don't know what the person's going through. Let's be frank. Like, I have a couple friends that I talk to like every other day. But unless they tell me the struggles they're going through, or God tells me, because that's something God does do on occasion, he will tell you that someone's going through something and what to pray for. But unless one of those two things happen, you don't know. But you have a testimony that even if it's small, could help strengthen them, could help their faith grow. And as he's refining you and he's using you to refine others, what you start to realize is as this is unfolding, Jesus starts to be reflected in both of y'all. And as I said, the refining process, it's long. It may not feel like all the impurities are getting removed, because they start bubbling up. They start coming to the surface as you're being refined and you're in that fire. They start to become more apparent that A, there are impurities, and B, they're not gone yet. But if you stick with Jesus and the refining process, it's only a matter of time before God removes them. And as he removes them, we resemble him more and more. Because iron sharpeneth iron, so a man sharpeneth the countenance of his friend. We are being refined on multiple levels, through multiple processes. And we only notice them on occasion. But if we take a minute to look at where we've come from the impurities that we started with to where we are now, we see that God has done marvelous and miraculous changes. And we have almost an obligation to share some of those with people. So, in closing, I would just like to say, we are not just being refined, but God could be using us to refine others as well. And so, as a show of that, I would like everyone to just tell someone that's next to you or close to you something that God has done for you in the last week. Like I said, it doesn't have to be big. It could be something small. What matters is you share what God is doing so that it encourages their faith. And I thank y'all for this opportunity. I thank Brother Alders again. And that is all I have for y'all.
What has God done in the last week for us? It may not be the last week, but it should be recently. What God is transforming, doing in our lives. This past week will be a week that I remember. I don't know if you've ever walked with God and it seemed like you couldn't reach the treasure. It's promised, but it just sits there. It just seems so out of your reach. And years ago, God showed me Matthew 6. And don't worry, don't this, don't that. And I actually told him at the time he showed it to me, I said, Lord, your word lies. It lies. Now, that's not something you need to tell the Lord. But I was being honest with God, and I wasn't trying to be mean. I was hurt because the promises of God were not coming true in my life, and that hurt. I don't know about you, but there's things in the book that don't seem to come true for you. And I carried that Matthew 6 a long time. And I remember how he got me. And I realized that God had zinged me, whatever zing means. And it says, but seek ye first the kingdom and his righteousness, and all this will be added to you. So this week, the key to that treasure chest, I put it in, and the cylinders all fell into place. The locking mechanism opened, and all things that men seek after were mine. And I'm going to preach on one aspect of that today, and it's just treasure. And inside of that, there's another. I almost wish I could talk about the second part of it more than the first, but the first is important, and without the first, you can't get to the second. So I'll have to talk about the first today. But I want you to know today, the Word of God may seem to lie to you, But if you'll stay with the Lord, if you'll have faith in God, remember, faith is not having it. Faith is believing it's out there. And it becomes evidence. If you hold on to faith when it's not there, there's going to come a day when it is there, because it's the evidence of things that are not, but will be. In Jesus' name. Good to have all of you today. Brother and Sister Callaway are in Livingston. Her brother-in-law is being baptized today, and so they're in Livingston to see that. And there's some more. Brother and Sister Franco are sick. Sister Ammon's grandson has been very sick, but he's doing much better, but she's still there with him today. I was wondering if there are any prayer requests.